Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Congressman Andre Carson says the late Jesse Jackson laid the groundwork for the civil rights activism of today. Jackson died on February 17th at the age of 84. Carson talked to News 8 Daybreak about Jackson's impact and his own memories of meeting him.
This is a major loss, certainly, for civil rights movement and the entire country. Can you talk about his impact?
Well, today we mourn a civil rights icon. I also mourn a mentor and really an inspiration. Reverend Jackson had a vision for a rainbow coalition, the idea that people from different backgrounds could be united in the fight for social justice. And it was the idea that we could transform our country and everyone had to be included. And we're in a time where some politicians use diversity as a dirty word or a bad word. But I think diversity is our strength. Diversity actually makes us better in every way. And Reverend Jackson really changed our nation's landscape. Before the great President Obama, there was Jesse Jackson and that imagery. And he had an influence on me, as did Muhammad Ali with his rhyming style, which I still utilize today as someone who was an artist, but also I was very inspired by his movement as a kid. From 1984, even 1988, it inspired so many of us, even President Obama. And, you know, we're still fighting for civil rights today. Jesse Jackson was very close to Dr. Martin Luther King. He was there when he was assassinated. You know, he often repeated the idea that everyone is somebody. He said, I may be poor, but I am somebody. I may be young, but I am somebody. I may be on welfare, but I am somebody. He fought to recognize the common humanity in every person. And that's how we'll be honoring him this morning.
Well, and you mentioned he was one of your mentors. Your grandmother, Julia Carson, also got to appear alongside Jackson in 1984 here in Indianapolis when he was running for president at the time, and she was in the state Senate. What was so special to you about that moment?
Well, it was a movement. I think it was a movement of here is an African-American man who was attempting to run for the highest office in the land, some would argue, on the planet. And I think the imagery of a black man running for president did a lot to the psychology of our country, and importantly, the psychology of young black men and women and men and women of color. And what's important to note is that he built a rainbow coalition. There were white brothers and sisters who helped him, Jewish brothers and sisters who helped him, South Asian, African, European, Arab, East Asian. It was truly a rainbow coalition, and it sowed the seeds for what we are really benefiting from today.
On a personal level, do you have any memories you want to share of Reverend Jackson and his work?
I can remember in, 1984, he was campaigning, and we were at a church of Dr. Andrew J. Brown and his son Tommy Brown, and we were in the basement. This was during Operation Breadbasket, and Reverend Jackson was very lively in his language, and I was shocked. I sat in the corner as I think I was 9 to be 10 later that year, very shocked. And I think he noticed, because I was the only kid in the room, how shocked I was at this exchange between these local leaders, and some words were used, but I think he got a thrill out of it because he stared at me and his language was livelier. And I ran into him at the Democratic Convention a couple of years ago, and we talked about it. He laughed, but I still have a relationship with his sons and members of his family, and we always thank them. And, his son was just telling me recently that people don't know the Midwestern connection is that they are related to the Jackson family, and Michael Jackson's their cousin. And that's great Midwestern history that often gets overlooked. And Reverend Jackson did so much. I hope history is kind to him because he deserves it. He sowed the seeds for what we're benefiting from today. We wouldn't have President Obama without Jesse Jackson, and many of us wouldn't be here with this idea that we could serve in some kind of way with the help of brothers and sisters from across the human family without the seeds that were sown by Reverend Jackson.
A legacy that he will definitely leave behind. Representative Andre Carson, thank you so much for sharing your memories and your time with us this morning. We truly appreciate it.
What an honor. Thank you, ma'am.
And President Donald Trump also paid tribute to Jackson at a Black History Month event at the White House. Here's what he had to say.
Begin by expressing our sadness at the passing of a person who I knew very well. Jesse was a piece of work, I want to tell you. He was a piece of work, but he was a good man. He was a real hero, and I just want to pay my highest respects to Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a good man. He was actually, as you got to know him, he got better and better all the time. A lot of people, you get to know him, they get worse and worse. Jesse got better and better. But I knew him well long before becoming president, and he really was special with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. You would say Jesse had serious street smarts, right? A very important ingredient to life, I will tell you.
All right, coming up, the Chicago Bears take a big step toward moving to Indiana. We hear from lawmakers as they work to bring the team over the border. All right, welcome back. The Chicago Bears say they've tentatively selected a site in Hammond, Indiana. The news came on the same day lawmakers advanced a measure to bring one of the NFL's oldest teams to the Hoosier State. Ever Tim Spears caught up with lawmakers moments after the news broke.
There's a shared commitment between both these parties to make this happen.
Hugs and handshakes for Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott after the Senate Ways and Means Committee unanimously advances a bill to help build a new stadium for the Chicago Bears here in the Hoosier State.
And I hear people all the time say, Mayor, these stadiums don't bring anything to the host community. And I said, I guess it really depends on your perspective.
There's been no renderings released like we saw in Gary, Indiana's pitch, but the Bears have made it known they want a mixed-use site with the stadium surrounded by restaurants, hotels, and housing.
We're going to make a Bearsville right outside of this stadium. It's going to be a whole separate city within the city of Hammond, and I think it's going to be absolutely transformational for my city.
If passed, Senate Bill 27 would establish the Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority, a new body with the power to finance and develop everything needed for an NFL stadium. Additional taxes in Hammond as well as Lake and Porter counties would cover the cost. The state would own the stadium. Then the Bears would sign a 35-year lease and invest $2 billion. The team saying in a statement, "We are committed to finishing the remaining site-specific necessary due diligence to support our vision to build a world-class stadium near the Wolf Lake area in Hammond, Indiana."
And I don't want to speak for the Bears. But I think the Bears are coming to Hammond, Indiana.
The father of State Representative Earl Harris Jr. of Lake County tried to bring the Bears to Northwest Indiana in the 90s, and Harris has helped revitalize the effort in recent years.
So the amount of people that have said to me, we thought you were crazy 3 years ago when you started talking about this, have now come back and said, you know what, you were right. You had the vision. Your father had the vision.
He points out George Halas, the founder of the Chicago Bears, actually started his professional football career as a player with the Hammond All-Stars in the 20s.
So when you talk about the Chicago Bears coming to Hammond, they're really just coming home.
Fans calling Chicago sports radio stations feel differently.
I think it's a disgrace to the team, to the state, to the city, to the fans. There's no reason they should be playing in Hammond. It's the Chicago Bears. It's not the Hammond Bears.
The Bears still own land in Arlington Heights, Illinois, where it's lobbied for incentives on a new stadium. The Deputy Chief of Staff for Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker writing on social media, Illinois was ready to move this bill forward after a productive 3-hour meeting yesterday. The Bears leader requested that ILGA pause the hearing to make further tweaks to the bill. This morning, we were surprised to see a statement lauding Indiana and ignoring Illinois. Now, all signs suggest the deal to get the Bears across state lines is at the goal line.
Indiana's got the best offer on the table. We got the best business environment. Why would the Bears walk away from a better deal?
From the State House, Tim Spears for Wish TV and WishTV.com.
Well, also at the State House, Senate leaders say they plan to vote this week on whether to send an immigration enforcement bill to the governor. Our government reporter Garrett Berquist explains how it could affect employers and schools in the state.
State House Republicans in both chambers have worked on the bill for more than a year.
The biggest piece of this bill is having our local law enforcement step into the shoes, if you will, of the federal government to help enforce these laws and to make sure that they're doing it properly. We expect to see them working side by side.
All governmental bodies would have to comply with immigration detainer requests. They also would have to notify a judge in writing. Employers could not recruit, hire, or employ anyone who is not authorized to work in Indiana. And the Department of Correction would work on training requirements for county jails on how to deal with immigration cases.
Some of these have been small town police, small county jails. This is a whole separate area of training that they're not familiar with. We are happy to help, but we need to make sure we're doing it properly. So Department of Corrections has assured me they already do this training with their own officers. They know how to do it.
Republicans say schools are among the governmental bodies that would have to comply with any immigration requests. They say that doesn't actually change much policy. Democrats say that means the bill turns almost every government agency into an extension of ICE. They say it will lead to racial profiling.
For the first time in Indiana history, teachers, doctors, local officials, and police could face penalties. Not could, they will face penalties in how they handle immigration, federal immigration enforcement issues, even if they did not knowingly violate the law. And our schools need to be spaces where parents know that all kids are safe, that their child is safe. But when one kid is unsafe, that whole classroom, that entire school is going to be unsafe.
The bill already passed both chambers. A concurrence vote in the Senate accepts the changes the House made and sends the bill directly to Governor Mike Braun. At the State House, I'm Garrett Berquist for Wish TV and WishTV.com.
All right, coming up, we ask Indiana's best political team about the impacts of that immigration bill as the legislative session enters its final week.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Carly Macer and Republican Matt Bell. Good to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So let's begin with the immigration enforcement bill. Lawmakers plan to vote on this week, as we just mentioned a little while ago. So it requires all governmental bodies to comply with immigration detainers. It also prohibits hiring or employing anyone who is not authorized to work in the United States. Matt, we'll start with you here. Democrats say this will force school staff to comply with federal immigration enforcement requests. Is that a concern that you agree with or understand at least?
It's not a concern that I agree with. You know, primarily this bill is about closing loopholes in our existing sanctuary city laws. We prohibit sanctuary cities in Indiana, but there have been loopholes that have allowed some municipalities and some post-secondary institutions to perform sanctuary activities. That's not acceptable. Governor Braun has insisted that I want Indiana to have the toughest immigration law in America, and the legislature has delivered that to him with a bill that focuses on cooperating with federal authorities, making sure that jobs go to Hoosiers who are legally here, and closing loopholes that have existed for far too long in communities across our state.
Yeah. Carly?
Yeah, I think for the municipalities and for the safety of our communities, it creates a lot of tension. And I also think for the schools and for our businesses, is this opening up? Where does this really fall? So I know for sure I'm going to be watching, as they say, the devil's in the details. I'm going to be really paying close attention to that because it is creating more unsafe situations for our communities long term, or is it doing what Matt is saying and what the governor would like to do?
Right, and as you very well know, Carly, Republicans say, hey, look, this is the only way we can, ICE can track down unaccompanied minors, right? So what do you say to that?
Well, I'm going to disagree with Matt as well. I do think that our schools are under a tremendous amount of stress, and with the federal government, state government, and then you also have your local law enforcement and everybody in between. Is it creating too much of confusion or understanding? And where does the accountability really lie at the end of it? I think it is a very important issue and time for us to really stay on top of this and do it right. If we're going to be doing it, we need to make sure it's right and it's safe and everybody understands the details, including our law enforcement.
Yeah, Matt,
businesses.
final word on this before we move on to the Bears.
Every Hoosier can feel safer knowing that those illegal immigrants who are arrested and in custody in Indiana will not be released back into a community if ICE has filed a detainer request for them. That should be policy in every city, state, and community in the state of Indiana, and the legislature is ensuring that it will be.
Okay, so we'll see what happens with that. Let's talk about the Bears, because everyone is reporting on this. Everyone has an opinion on this. Obviously, the news came out this week that we are moving forward as a state with trying to acquire them. How likely is that? Carly, we'll start with you this time. Do you think it's going to happen?
If you would have asked me just a few days ago, I still would have said, oh, the likelihood of that is very slim. But I got to say, it's, I'd say a 50-50. I would give a big shout out to my friend and colleague, Earl Harris, who I know has worked on it for many years, and it's a dream becoming a reality potentially for him. I think there's a lot of things at stake here. There's an opportunity for us to perhaps make the deal of a lifetime for the region of Indiana that would really benefit from it. But I also would say that here, as a taxpayer myself, living here in Indianapolis, I know my neighbors still talk about paying for the Hoosier Dome, let alone Lucas Oil. So I think with Hoosiers right now that still are struggling to pay for gas, utilities, mortgages, all of the things, as exciting as this is, how does it help them? How does that really affect them, at least today?
Okay, Matt, so you maybe chime in on this and also answer some of those questions if you can.
I'll do my best. Yesterday watching this announcement was the happiest I've seen the Indiana State House since Sine Die of last year. But it's a great day for Indiana. It's a great day to think we could bring a flagship franchise to the NFL to our Hoosier state. That they'd want to be here because we have the best business environment in the Midwest, because businesses come here and grow and expand, because we host better than any other state hosts, because we are a state that is inviting. More than that, it's so exciting to see what happens when our Republican leaders, Governor Braun and Speaker Houston and Senator Mishler, work together with their Democrat colleagues in the region to say we can deliver this together. And that Republican leadership is the same leadership that's built the firm financial foundation in Indiana that's so attractive to the Bears and others. I think it's a great day for Indiana. Kudos to Governor Braun for starting this process and engaging with the Bears, to the legislative leaders who've put together a compelling package that makes us competitive, certainly to Representative Harris for his vision and his father's vision before that. It's a great day to be a Hoosier, and that was a great announcement.
To Carly's point, though, how do you get the average taxpayer out there to say, I understand all of that. This is great for the state, but why should I be paying for this?
Because the vision is more than just building a stadium. It's really building a community that's going to be inviting year-round, 365 days a year. That's lots of construction jobs. That's lots of permanent employment. That's lots of opportunity to grow wealth in your community, and particularly if you're in Northwest Indiana. Not to mention the tourism that it will encourage into the region. Super beneficial to Hoosiers across the board.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with it. I think fingers crossed. I think a lot of people are hoping that it actually does become a reality. Quickly, though, I have about a minute left. I want to give you final thoughts on what we can expect over the next week or so in the final week of the session. Carly, sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all on the edge of our seat. I think it all comes down to the final push and what happens. We both know that, it's down to the details and timing, but healthcare needs to be a priority as we continue to move forward. We need to make sure that we're staying on top of this daycare opportunities for our children, and then the affordability of housing. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out and how it all ends. But if I know how the legislative body works, all of it happens at the last minute, and we'll be watching.
Yep, 30 seconds, Matt.
watching the affordable housing bill, House Bill 1001, I think is the largest piece of legislation that's unsettled. Representative Doug Miller, Senator Chris Garton are leading a fight that 80% of Hoosiers support, and that's making housing more affordable and more available across our state. They're fighting tremendous special interests who are intent on ensuring that prices stay too high for Hoosiers. Working that out over the next 7 days is going to take a lot of leadership. They're the right people to do it.
All right, we'll see what happens. Good to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
There you go. Much more to come after the break. Thank you.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Make sure to tune in on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock for our special coverage of the State of the Union speech. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.